So one of the first things you're going to need to do when you start up a KOS is you're going to have to configure your motors and configure your axis. Now you don't have to do all of it that's on this. The most important thing is you get the mark begin and mark end on each one of these, but it's not a terribly difficult process. And if you just leave the system alone and you go away and you come back a few weeks later, you can usually start it right back up with where you're at. But if you pack the system away and put it away, you're probably going to need to recalibrate it each time. And if you're going to be doing things like virtual production, it's very important that you're very careful about your calibration to make sure that Unreal Engine understands where the camera is in real time. So let's just go ahead and get started. So as you see here, I have a Cineslider, a Cinedrive with the 5X control module set up, which makes it behave just like a Cineshooter Plus or a Secondshooter Pro. The big difference is just the hardware that you're using, and the Cineshooter Pro is only a 3-ax kit. I've also got the Cinedrive focus motor, and then I've got a Secondshooter pan axis that I'm using as a turntable for my subject. So I'm using all 5 axes. Now, when you first get it connected, you're going to see that you're connected, and this says that I've got a USB connection, and it says to unknown, but it is going to a 5X control module. Okay, that's just the current name of it. I don't know why it's that way. We're not going to worry about that so much. What we're going to do is just focus on getting up and running. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is you have to calibrate all the axes on here. So all 5 of these we need to get stop and end points on, or else we can't go any further. Now once this is done, if there's a power cycle and you bring everything back up later, as long as nothing's moved, you can keep it going without having to recalibrate the axis. But anytime something gets moved, then you would have to. So let's go ahead and start out. So I'm going to go over to first auxiliary 1, because I'm trying to remember, is that my planet or my turntable, or is that my focus motor? So I'm going to do a right click. Well, actually, the first thing I'm going to do is just move it and see what it is. Okay, so that's my turntable over there. So I'm going to do a right click on here, and I'm going to go ahead and name this planet. And that's just because that's what I like to name it for the uses that I use with virtual production. So I'm going to hit close, and then I'm going to go to auxiliary 2. I know that'll be my focus. I want to make sure that it has focus selected for the type. Whether or not you're using this planet stuff, and if you are, you want to have it selected as axis type pan. Okay. But other than that, there's really not much to worry about in there except for axis for planet. I like to kick that max setup speed up a little bit because it's a little bit slow if you're wanting to do a full 360. So now that I have those configured, at least I know where they are, I'm going to go over to the slider, and we're just going to start getting everything on here calibrated. So the first thing I do is I'm going to move the slider from one end to the next, and then I'm going to enter the measurement in between. So the way I do it is I just have some blue painter's tape on my Cineslider, and I've got a mark with this machine screw over here and this one over here, and with that I'll know how far it is that I've moved, and I already have it all kind of mapped out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to start sending this. Now let's reverse that. Start sending this. I'm going to send this down to the end, but not all the way down to the end. Right about there. Let's bring it back a little bit. I want this nut to be right in line with this portion here. So I'm going to hit mark begin, and then we're going to go ahead and pull this all the way down. Now one thing I need to watch out for is that I don't hit the slider motor with the Cinedrive. So I'm going to bring this a little bit further down until this one on the far end is right in line with that pan axis. And that looks like about perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and do mark end. Now in this case, I've already measured it out. I know this is 66 millimeter or centimeters from end to end. So you want to make sure that you have it selected for whatever measurement you're using. And since it's 66, I'm going to go with -33 on the left and -33 on the right, or 33 on the right. And then if I hit go to 0, that should be the middle portion. And as you see, now the backdrop's responding because I have that beginning and end set up on there. So next we're going to go ahead and worry about pan. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring this over a little bit more so the camera's looking right down the track. Right there. I'm going to do mark begin, and then we're going to flip this around the other way. Okay, a little bit more. Go back just a hair. Okay, I feel that looks good, so I'm going to do mark end. And then on here you're going to want to have it set for degrees, and I'm going to do -90 and 90. If you don't want to go all the way -90, if you want to do 45 or you want to do 180 each direction, whatever is whatever your bag is, that's fine. I just stick with 90. It's because it's easy reference for me to make sure that it's set correctly. Okay, so now that looks like it's facing straight forward. We're good there. On to tilt. Now tilt is kind of a pain in the butt to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pan the camera. We're going to go a little bit further. Just like that. And then I have it's a digital angle meter. So we can turn that on. The first thing what I really need to do is I need to take this tilt, and I just want to get that looking about perfectly straight and just make sure all the mechanics look like they're lined up in their spot. And that looks good. So I'm going to put this on a flat spot and hit 0. And then I'm just going to raise this up until I see that say 22. Okay, so that looks about 22. Now I'm going to go back down until it says 22. And you can do 35, 45, whatever fits for you is fine. I just don't really need to have much more than this because I've got that small screen that I always try to keep in frame. I'm going to say mark end. And then, of course, here I've got degrees for the tilt. -22 is down, +22 is up. I'm going to go to 0. And now we're going to put this pan back to 0. I'm going to check the tilt and make sure it's moving with the camera. Okay, because if it's not, even though this isn't a virtual production one, if it's not doing that, you got to go to edit, or you go to the Unreal tab and you have a reverse tilt on camera 1 if you need to flip that. So now we got that set up. We're going to do planet. Now planet is the plant that we have over there. So I'm just going to get that label facing straight at me. And I'm going to say mark begin. And then I'm just going to rotate this until it does a full 360. Oop. Overshot pretty good. Now, you don't have to be this exact with it. In fact, you don't even have to use the unit position stuff if you don't want to. I just think it's a good idea to just kind of go ahead and do that. So I'm going to say mark end. And now I know if I'm doing -180 and 180, if I hit 0, it should flip this thing around perfectly. As you can see, now the background is locked in with the plant. Very cool. Okay, now focus is the last one. I'm going to move the pan over so I can see my lens. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is go to focus. I'm going to bring that over towards near. And that's way closer than I really need to be. Now I'm going to bring that over from far. That's definitely way more than I need it to be. And I'm going to do mark end. And now my focus is set. And with that, they are all set. So, like I said, if you need to increase, decrease, your setup speed or anything like that, that's all done in here. If any additional damping or if you want to rename it, anything you want to do, you have access to it in here. And now we also have a couple things up here to look at. When I'm doing slider, I prefer to use analog mode. And what it does is it goes back to this. If I go this way, the farther I go, the faster it goes. If I go very little bit, it moves very little. So it's kind of like a toggle on speed rather than when it's in regular mode, you're actually telling it what position to be in. So here, this would be move to the 0 point. It'll tell me down here exactly how close that is. Oh, looks like I nailed it. Go me. So I'm going to put that in analog mode, and then pan, analog mode, tilt, analog mode, planet, I leave that, focus, generally I leave that. And that's normally how I have this set up. So that's pretty much all there is for getting this set up and you know, getting your robot running. It's like I said, it's always good to get these things in here. But from here, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next tutorial, so be sure to check that out, where we're going to go over setting up a motion and understanding the graph page and all the different options that you have for setting up live movements.